Back in the days when farming was a way of life, lunch wasn't just about filling your stomach. It was about using what you had, making do with what the land provided, and feeding your family with love and ingenuity. Today, we're diving into 30 forgotten farmer lunches that have faded into history, honoring the resourcefulness and hearty meals that once fueled a day's hard work in the fields. Fried bologna sandwich. There's a certain kind of magic in simplicity, and the fried bologna sandwich is a perfect example of that. It's a meal born out of necessity, yet somehow it became a beloved farm favorite, passed down through generations. In the busy world of a farmer, time was always in short supply, but this sandwich could be whipped up in minutes, offering a hearty, satisfying lunch that packed a punch without fuss. Imagine biting into a warm, crispy slice of bologna, the edges perfectly browned and slightly caramelized, nestled between two slices of soft, fresh bread. Add a dollop of mustard and a few pickle slices, and you've got a meal that not only fills you up, but feels like home. During the Great Depression and World War II, when meat was often rationed, bologna was one of the affordable ways to stretch a meal. It became the go-to for farm families, cheap, filling, and versatile. The sandwich was so simple, yet so perfect in its own way. Even today, fried bologna sandwiches evoke a sense of nostalgia for those days of hard work, laughter, and family. The beauty of the fried bologna sandwich is in its ability to adapt. Some farmers added a slice of cheese, others went for a little extra mustard or hot sauce. No matter the variation, the core of this dish remained unchanged. The humble bologna, fried to perfection, a comforting taste of a simpler time. To make this timeless sandwich, you'll need a few basic ingredients: bologna, thick or thin sliced, depending on your preference; soft white bread, a sturdy, fresh loaf works best; mustard, or your favorite condiment; pickles, optional, but a crunchy touch that adds a nice balance; and butter for frying to achieve that golden, crispy edge. Start by heating a little butter in a skillet over medium heat. Once it's melted and hot, add the bologna slices. Fry them until the edges start to curl up and turn a golden brown. This should take about 2 to 3 minutes per side. Meanwhile, toast your bread slices lightly in another pan or toaster. Once everything is ready, place the bologna between the slices of bread, add mustard, or any condiments you prefer, and top it with a few pickle slices if you like that extra zing. Press the sandwich together and enjoy the crispy, savory goodness. Chicken and dumplings. There's a certain warmth that comes with a bowl of chicken and dumplings, a dish that's perfect for a chilly afternoon on the farm. This meal, with its rich, savory broth and soft, pillowy dumplings, was the kind of comfort food that could fill the bellies of hardworking farmers, giving them the strength to get back out in the fields. It was a meal born out of practicality, using up leftover chicken and simple pantry staples. But what made it special was the way it brought the whole family together, gathered around the table, sharing stories and laughter as they dipped their spoons into the steaming bowl. Chicken and dumplings was the kind of dish that was often made when there was more than enough chicken from a recent dinner. Farmers would turn those leftovers into something even better, stretching the meal to feed more mouths, or simply as a way to create a hearty lunch to get through the afternoon work. It wasn't just about the food, it was about making do with what you had and turning it into something satisfying and comforting. The dumplings themselves were the real star of the show. Light and fluffy, they soaked up the broth, becoming tender little pockets of goodness that paired perfectly with the savory chicken. It wasn't a dish that required much fuss or many ingredients, but it was filling, flavorful, and just the kind of hearty meal a farmer needed after a long morning of labor. To make this timeless comfort dish, you'll need chicken, whether leftover or fresh, flour, eggs, butter, baking powder, and some broth or stock. The process is simple. Boil the chicken, then mix the dough for the dumplings, and cook everything together in a big pot, letting the flavors meld together as it simmers. The result is a bowl of chicken and dumplings that warms you from the inside out, taking you back to a simpler time when all you needed was a little love, a little patience, and a lot of heart to make a meal that could nourish both body and soul. Cornmeal mush. Cornmeal mush was a go-to dish for farmers, a humble meal that could be enjoyed at any time of day. It was simple, filling, and made from ingredients that were always close at hand: cornmeal, water, salt, and perhaps a little butter or syrup for sweetness. In a world where resources were often tight, cornmeal mush provided a hearty, satisfying meal without much cost or effort. It could be whipped up quickly for a fast breakfast, or made in larger quantities for a long day of work ahead. The beauty of cornmeal mush lies in its versatility. Eat it plain, or dress it up with toppings like honey, molasses, or fruit, depending on what was available. This dish has roots deep in rural America, where corn was grown in abundance and used for everything from cornbread to grits to mush. Farmers could store the cornmeal for long periods, and it could easily be transformed into something hot and filling to keep the body going during a hard day of labor. Cornmeal mush, often eaten alongside a slice of bread or a piece of bacon, was a reliable choice for a quick, cheap, and energizing meal. The texture of the mush was soft and creamy, especially when it was stirred just right, and it could be cooked to your preferred thickness. For some, it was a simple, savory dish, enjoyed with a pat of butter and a sprinkle of salt. For others, it became a sweet treat, drizzled with syrup or molasses, bringing a taste of comfort that made every bite feel like home. To make cornmeal mush, you only need a few ingredients: cornmeal, water, salt, and a bit of butter, if you like it rich. Bring the water to a boil, stir in the cornmeal slowly to avoid lumps, and cook until it thickens to your desired consistency. You can serve it as is, or top it with whatever you have on hand: syrup, brown sugar, or a sprinkle of cinnamon. It's a dish that's simple, resourceful, and always comforting. Cabbage rolls. Cabbage rolls have long been a staple in the hearts and kitchens of farm families, providing a nourishing and filling meal that could stretch a little meat and feed a lot of hungry mouths. This dish was often made when there was a need to use up leftovers or stretch ingredients further, a perfect example of how farmers took what they had and turned it into something special. Wrapped in tender cabbage leaves, the filling, typically a mixture of ground meat and rice, was slowly simmered in a savory tomato sauce, creating a warm, comforting dish that was as satisfying as it was frugal. Cabbage was a common crop on farms, and it stored well through the colder months, making it an ideal vegetable for this dish. With the right mix of ground meat and rice, the cabbage rolls could go a long way, feeding a family without requiring a lot of extra ingredients. It was the kind of meal that could be made in large batches, perfect for a hearty lunch that could also be eaten for dinner or saved for later. What made cabbage rolls so beloved wasn't just the ingredients, but the way they brought families together. The process of preparing the cabbage, making the filling, and rolling each one by hand was often a family affair. Once cooked, these cabbage rolls were more than just food. They were a symbol of hard work, love, and resourcefulness. To make cabbage rolls, you'll need cabbage leaves, ground beef, or a mix of beef and pork, rice, onion, tomato sauce, and spices. First, blanch the cabbage leaves to soften them. Then mix the ground meat with the rice and spices, creating a hearty filling. Roll the mixture in the cabbage leaves, place them in a pot, and cover with tomato sauce. Let them simmer until the flavors meld together, and you'll have a warm, flavorful meal that's bound to take you back to the simple pleasures of farm life. Beef and vegetable stew. There's nothing quite like a steaming bowl of beef and vegetable stew to warm you up after a long, cold day working on the farm. This dish was a farmer's best friend during the fall and winter months, when the harvest was in full swing and the need for a hearty meal was as pressing as ever. It's a dish that's all about using what you've got, whether that's leftover beef from a roast or vegetables freshly pulled from the garden. Beef and vegetable stew was a way to take simple, everyday ingredients and transform them into a filling, comforting meal that could feed a crowd. The beauty of this stew lies in its simplicity. It wasn't a fancy dish, but it was full of flavor. A little bit of beef, some root vegetables, and a rich broth were all it took to make a meal that could be savored on the porch or eaten in the warmth of the farmhouse kitchen. What made this stew so special was how the flavors developed over time, with the beef tenderizing and the vegetables soaking up all that savory goodness. Farmers often made this stew in big batches, simmering it on the stove for hours, letting the ingredients meld together into a perfect harmony. It was the kind of dish that could be made on a Sunday and enjoyed throughout the week, a steady companion for the long days ahead. To make beef and vegetable stew, you'll need beef stew meat, potatoes, carrots, onions, peas, and beef broth. Start by browning the beef in a little oil to develop rich flavors. Then, add the chopped vegetables and broth, letting everything simmer together for a couple of hours until the meat is tender and the vegetables are soft. Season it with salt, pepper, and herbs to taste, and you've got a meal that will keep you full and satisfied. Whether served with a slice of cornbread or eaten straight from the pot, beef and vegetable stew is the kind of dish that brings warmth to both the body and the soul. Biscuits and gravy. Biscuits and gravy, a true comfort food, has long been a farmer's lunch of choice. This dish, rich and hearty, was the kind of meal that could fuel a farmer through a long afternoon in the fields. It wasn't just about filling the belly, it was about taking something simple and making it feel like home. The fluffy, golden biscuits paired with the creamy, savory sausage gravy were a match made in heaven, and they didn't require much more than a few basic ingredients to create a meal that felt like a celebration. The roots of biscuits and gravy lie in the heart of Southern cooking, but the dish found its way into kitchens across America, especially on farms. During times when meat was scarce, sausage gravy provided a quick, inexpensive way to add flavor and richness to an otherwise simple meal. Biscuits, made from flour, butter, and milk, were easy to prepare in a pinch and could be served alongside any number of dishes, but when paired with gravy, they turned into something special. For farmers, biscuits and gravy represented a meal that could be quickly thrown together and eaten in the middle of a busy day. Whether it was after a morning of chores or before heading back out to the fields, this dish was the kind of lunch that warmed you up and kept you going. To make biscuits and gravy, you'll need flour, butter, milk, sausage, and a bit of seasoning. Start by making the biscuits. Mix the flour, butter, and milk together, roll out the dough, and bake until golden. While the biscuits bake, cook the sausage in a skillet until it's nicely browned. Then, add a bit of flour to the sausage to make a roux and slowly stir in the milk to create a creamy gravy. Season it with salt and pepper to taste. Once the biscuits are ready, split them open and smother them with the rich sausage gravy. It's a dish that's as warm and satisfying as the farmers who once relied on it to get through their day. Potato salad. Potato salad may seem like a simple dish, but for farmers, it was more than just a side. It was the perfect lunch. Made with ingredients that were always on hand, it was a reliable, hearty dish that could stretch to feed a large family. Often served alongside other farm meals or packed for a midday break in the fields, potato salad was comforting, filling, and endlessly adaptable. It was also a dish that made use of fresh produce from the garden, and that sense of resourcefulness is what made it so special. Potatoes were a mainstay on the farm, easy to grow, store, and cook with. They provided the base for countless meals, and potato salad became one of the simplest, yet most beloved, ways to enjoy them. The beauty of potato salad lay in its versatility. Some families made it with a creamy mayo-based dressing, others preferred mustard or a tangy vinegar dressing. Add in hard-boiled eggs, pickles, onions, or celery, and the potato salad could be adjusted to suit every taste. Whether served cold or at room temperature, it was always satisfying. What made potato salad particularly great for farmers was that it could be made in large batches, stored for a few days, and eaten at any time. It could be eaten with a sandwich, alongside a hot dish, or just on its own as a light but filling meal. No matter how it was prepared, it was always a comforting reminder of the simplicity of farm life. To make potato salad, you'll need potatoes, eggs, mayonnaise, mustard, onions, celery, and pickles. Start by boiling the potatoes and eggs until they're soft. Once cooled, chop the potatoes and eggs into bite-sized pieces. In a large bowl, mix together the potatoes, eggs, chopped onions, and celery. Add mayonnaise and mustard to taste, stirring until everything is well coated. Season with salt and pepper, and if you like, throw in some chopped pickles for an extra bite. Chill the salad for a bit to let the flavors meld, and you've got a classic farm meal that's simple, filling, and delicious. Egg salad sandwiches. Egg salad sandwiches were a lunchtime staple for many farm families, offering a simple yet satisfying meal that could be quickly thrown together with ingredients that were always on hand. With a hearty, creamy filling nestled between slices of fresh bread, egg salad became the kind of dish that could be eaten on a break in the fields or packed into a lunch pail for a meal on the go. It wasn't fancy, but it was delicious, and it had that perfect balance of rich, comforting flavors that made it a farm favorite. Eggs were a reliable, everyday ingredient on the farm, often sourced fresh from the chicken coop. Farmers were known for their ability to use what was available, and eggs were a perfect base for creating a filling meal without much fuss. Combining hard-boiled eggs with mayo, mustard, and a bit of seasoning created a creamy, tangy filling that could be spread generously on bread, turning a simple lunch into something special. The beauty of egg salad sandwiches was in their simplicity. While some families might have added ingredients like chopped pickles, onions, or even a dash of paprika, the core recipe was always the same. The eggs provided a satisfying protein, the mayonnaise gave it a creamy richness, and the bread held it all together. For farmers, it was a meal that could be made quickly, packed up easily, and eaten in the field or on the porch after a long morning's work. To make egg salad sandwiches, you'll need eggs, mayonnaise, mustard, salt, pepper, and bread. Begin by hard-boiling the eggs. Usually about 10 minutes of boiling is enough to get the yolk set. Once the eggs are cooled, peel and chop them into small pieces. In a mixing bowl, combine the chopped eggs with mayonnaise, mustard, salt, and pepper. Stir everything together until it's smooth and well combined. Spread the egg salad generously onto slices of bread, and your sandwich is ready to enjoy. It's a simple dish, but one that brings a taste of comfort with every bite. Hot dogs and sauerkraut. Hot dogs and sauerkraut may not seem like a traditional farm lunch, but for many farmers, this quick and simple dish was a go-to meal, especially on busy days when there was little time to prepare something elaborate. The beauty of this combination lies in its simplicity and the contrast of flavors. The salty, savory hot dog paired with the tangy, slightly sweet sauerkraut. It was a meal that required minimal effort, but was filling and satisfying enough to get a farmer through a hard day's work. The humble hot dog, often an affordable and convenient option, became a regular on the farm table, especially in times when fresh meat wasn't always readily available. Sauerkraut, made from fermented cabbage, was a common accompaniment. Cabbage grew easily on farms, and the preservation process allowed it to be stored for months, making sauerkraut an accessible ingredient throughout the year. This dish was also a way for farmers to add some flavor and variety to their meals without much cost. Hot dogs and sauerkraut were versatile and could be eaten in various ways. Some would enjoy the hot dog nestled in a bun with a generous helping of sauerkraut on top, while others might serve the sauerkraut on the side or even mix it into the dish. The beauty of this pairing was that it didn't require much preparation, making it the perfect meal when time was tight or when the day's labor had left you with little energy for cooking. To make hot dogs and sauerkraut, you'll need hot dogs, sauerkraut, mustard, optional, and rolls. Start by heating the sauerkraut in a pot, letting it simmer to bring out its tangy flavor. While that's cooking, grill or boil the hot dogs until they're plump and cooked through. Place the hot dogs in soft rolls and top with the warm sauerkraut. Add mustard if you like a bit of extra zing, and you've got a meal that's simple, flavorful, and truly satisfying. It's a reminder of how something so easy could carry so much comfort and history. Baked beans and cornbread. Baked beans and cornbread are a pairing that's both comforting and practical. A meal that's hearty enough to feed a whole family, yet simple enough to make on any given day. For farmers, this was the kind of lunch that could stretch for days, especially when cooked in large batches. It was a dish that made use of pantry staples and was easy to prepare, providing sustenance and warmth after a long morning in the fields. The rich, savory beans combined with the slightly sweet, crumbly cornbread made for a perfect balance of flavors that could satisfy hunger and lift spirits. Baked beans were often made with dried beans that could be stored for months, making them a staple on the farm. Farmers would cook them slowly in a pot, letting the flavors meld together as they simmered in a tangy, slightly sweet sauce made from ingredients like molasses or brown sugar. Adding a bit of bacon or ham could give the beans an extra layer of savory depth, turning them into a meal that felt complete on its own. Cornbread was the ideal sidekick to baked beans, soft, moist, and slightly sweet. It soaked up the rich sauce from the beans, creating a satisfying bite with every forkful. Cornmeal was easy to grow, and the cornbread could be made with just a few simple ingredients: cornmeal, flour, butter, and eggs. Whether baked in a skillet or a pan, it was always golden brown, with a slightly crispy crust that contrasted beautifully with the soft interior. To make baked beans and cornbread, start by cooking the beans. Soak dried beans overnight, then simmer them with a bit of bacon or ham, onion, molasses, and mustard until they're tender and flavorful. For the cornbread, mix cornmeal, flour, baking powder, butter, milk, and eggs, then bake until golden. Serve the beans hot, alongside a generous slice of cornbread, and enjoy a meal that's both filling and full of the flavors of simpler times. It's a dish that's both satisfying and steeped in tradition. Chicken pot pie. Chicken pot pie was a farm lunch that could take on many forms, but it always had one thing in common: comfort. It was the kind of meal that could turn leftovers into something special, using a simple combination of chicken, vegetables, and a buttery, flaky crust to create a hearty, filling lunch that warmed the soul. Farmers often made this dish when they had leftover roasted chicken, turning it into a new meal that was both satisfying and economical. The best part, it could be made in large batches, making it perfect for feeding a crowd after a long day's work. This dish was about practicality. Chicken pot pie could be made with whatever vegetables were available. Peas, carrots, and potatoes were common choices on the farm. The beauty of it was in its versatility, and it's likely that every farm family had their own version, adding their personal touch with herbs, spices, or even cheese. What remained consistent was the creamy filling, the tender chicken, and the golden, buttery crust that baked to perfection in the oven. Chicken pot pie was also a meal that could be eaten in one sitting or saved for later, making it the perfect make-ahead dish. Farmers often packed slices of pot pie for lunch in the fields, knowing it would hold up well in a lunch pail and provide the energy needed for the afternoon's work. Whether it was eaten fresh out of the oven or reheated from the day before, this dish was always a crowd pleaser. To make chicken pot pie, you'll need cooked chicken, vegetables like carrots, peas, and potatoes, butter, flour, milk, salt, pepper, and a pie crust, either homemade or store-bought. Start by making a creamy filling by cooking the vegetables in butter, adding flour to thicken, and then stirring in milk to create a smooth sauce. Mix in the chicken and season to taste. Pour the mixture into a pie crust, top with another layer of crust, and bake until golden. It's the kind of dish that's as satisfying as it is nostalgic, reminding you of the warmth and care that went into each meal prepared on the farm. Sloppy Joes. Sloppy Joes were a farm lunch that hit the spot, offering a filling and flavorful meal with minimal effort. Perfect for a busy day, this dish was quick to make and incredibly satisfying, ideal for farmers who needed a hearty lunch to keep them going. The beauty of Sloppy Joes lay in their simplicity: ground beef, onions, and a tangy sweet sauce, all piled onto a soft bun. It was a meal that could be eaten with one hand, leaving the other free to hold a drink or shovel a few more bites in before heading back out to the fields. The origins of Sloppy Joes are debated, but the dish became a popular choice in many farm kitchens because it was easy to prepare in large quantities, making it ideal for feeding a family. Ground beef, which was often on hand, was the star of the dish, and the sauce, made from ingredients like ketchup, mustard, and brown sugar, added the perfect balance of sweet and tangy flavor. Sloppy Joes were also forgiving in terms of ingredients, as farmers could adjust the sauce to their taste with a bit more or less sweetness, adding some heat if desired with a dash of hot sauce or chili powder. On a farm, this dish was a favorite because it could be made quickly on a busy afternoon. Farmers might even prepare the Sloppy Joe mixture ahead of time, knowing they could easily warm it up and serve it in a matter of minutes. Whether served on soft white buns or toasted rolls, Sloppy Joes were messy but undeniably delicious, and they filled the belly in a way that left everyone satisfied and ready for the work ahead. To make Sloppy Joes, you'll need ground beef, onions, ketchup, mustard, brown sugar, vinegar, salt, pepper, and hamburger buns. Start by browning the beef and sautéing the onions. Then, add the ketchup, mustard, brown sugar, vinegar, salt, and pepper, stirring until everything is combined and heated through. Serve the mixture on hamburger buns, and you've got a meal that's as tasty as it is easy to make. Fried chicken and mashed potatoes. Fried chicken and mashed potatoes. Now there's a farm lunch that feels like home. This classic combination has been a staple for generations, offering the perfect balance of crispy, savory fried chicken paired with creamy, buttery mashed potatoes. On the farm, it wasn't just a meal. It was a celebration of hard work and resourcefulness. Whether it was served for lunch after a long morning in the fields or on a Sunday when the family gathered around the table, this dish was a guaranteed crowd pleaser. Fried chicken, golden and crispy on the outside with tender, juicy meat on the inside, was often made using chicken raised on the farm. The process of breading and frying the chicken was a labor of love, passed down through the generations. But it wasn't just about the chicken, it was about the sides that brought the whole meal together. Mashed potatoes, made with fresh, farm-grown potatoes, were the perfect companion. They could be whipped into a silky smooth, buttery mash, or left a little chunky for texture. Either way, they were always the perfect vehicle for soaking up gravy. This meal was about nourishment, comfort, and the ability to make a little go a long way. The beauty of fried chicken and mashed potatoes on the farm was that it could be made in big batches, ensuring there was enough to feed a hungry crew after a day's work. Leftovers could be eaten the next day or even packed for lunch, making it a versatile and satisfying choice for farmers who had long hours and little time to spare. To make fried chicken and mashed potatoes, you'll need chicken pieces, flour, eggs, milk, potatoes, butter, milk, salt, and pepper. Start by coating the chicken in seasoned flour and frying it in hot oil until golden and crispy. For the mashed potatoes, peel and boil the potatoes until tender, then mash them with butter, milk, salt, and pepper. Serve the fried chicken alongside the creamy mashed potatoes, and you've got a hearty, comforting meal that will fill you up and keep you going strong. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Grilled cheese and tomato soup might just be the ultimate farm lunch, especially when the wind is howling outside and the chill is creeping in. This simple yet comforting meal was a favorite for many farmers, offering warmth, nourishment, and a taste of home, all wrapped up in a few basic ingredients. The rich, creamy soup, paired with the crispy, melty grilled cheese, was the kind of meal that could be made quickly when time was tight, but it still felt like a special treat. Tomatoes were grown in abundance on many farms, and while fresh tomatoes were often enjoyed in the summer, tomato soup was a perfect way to use canned tomatoes during the colder months. Farmers would simmer the tomatoes, adding seasonings and cream to create a smooth, comforting soup that warmed from the inside out. It was simple, but deeply satisfying. And what better to pair with a hot bowl of tomato soup than a grilled cheese sandwich? The grilled cheese sandwich was a farm classic for good reason. It was quick, easy, and made with ingredients that were always on hand. The combination of golden, crispy bread with gooey, melted cheese inside was hard to beat. Farmers often used whatever bread was available, whether it was homemade or store-bought, and any kind of cheese they had in the pantry. The result was a sandwich that could be eaten with one hand, leaving the other free to hold a bowl of soup or do a few more chores. To make grilled cheese and tomato soup, you'll need bread, cheese, cheddar was a popular choice, butter, tomatoes, cream, onion, garlic, and seasonings. Start by making the tomato soup. Sauté onions and garlic, then add tomatoes and simmer until soft. Blend the mixture until smooth and stir in cream. For the grilled cheese, butter the outside of 2 slices of bread, add cheese between them, and grill until golden brown on both sides. Serve the sandwich with the hot tomato soup and enjoy a meal that's simple, hearty, and full of nostalgia. Beef tacos. Beef tacos might not have originated on the farm, but over the years, they became a beloved and practical lunch for many farmers. It was a meal that could be put together in no time, using ingredients that were easy to keep on hand and versatile enough to satisfy a variety of tastes. Whether eaten in the field, at the kitchen table, or wrapped up for a quick lunch break, beef tacos offered a satisfying combination of flavors that were both hearty and light. Ground beef was a go-to protein for farm families because it was relatively affordable and easy to cook with. Often, it was seasoned with a simple blend of spices, salt, pepper, cumin, and chili powder that brought out its natural flavor. Farmers typically added whatever fresh ingredients were in season, from tomatoes to lettuce to onions, and topped it all off with cheese and a dollop of sour cream. The crunchy taco shell held everything together perfectly, offering that satisfying crisp with every bite. Beef tacos were also highly adaptable, which made them perfect for farm life. You could pile on the toppings or keep it simple. Sometimes, if there was extra meat or vegetables from dinner the night before, they would be repurposed into taco fillings. This dish was also great for using up leftovers, turning a basic meal into something new and exciting. To make beef tacos, you'll need ground beef, taco seasoning, or a mix of chili powder, cumin, and garlic powder, tortillas, soft or crunchy, lettuce, tomatoes, cheese, and any other toppings you prefer. Begin by browning the ground beef in a skillet and adding the seasoning. While the beef cooks, chop the lettuce and tomatoes. Once the beef is fully cooked, fill the taco shells with the meat, then layer on the lettuce, tomatoes, cheese, and any other toppings you desire. It's a meal that's simple, delicious, and just the right kind of comfort food for a farm lunch. Fried ham and eggs. Fried ham and eggs was the kind of lunch that could be whipped up quickly, providing the energy needed for another long afternoon in the fields. Simple yet satisfying, it was a favorite on many farms, where both ham and eggs were plentiful. The salty, savory ham paired perfectly with the richness of the fried eggs, creating a balanced and filling meal that could be eaten at any time of the day. Whether it was a quick lunch or a hearty breakfast for lunch, this dish never failed to deliver. Ham was often a treat on the farm, usually from a pig raised and butchered right on the property. Once smoked or cured, it could last for weeks, making it an ideal protein to have on hand. Eggs, of course, were readily available on most farms, as chickens provided a steady supply. Together, these two ingredients made for a meal that was both inexpensive and delicious. The beauty of fried ham and eggs lay in its simplicity. The ham could be fried until crispy on the edges, giving it a nice bite, while the eggs were cooked sunny side up or over easy, with the yolk soft and runny, ready to mix with the ham for extra flavor. Some farmers even like to pair it with a slice of bread, using it to sop up the yolk or the savory drippings from the ham. The whole dish came together quickly, which made it perfect for busy days when there was little time for a sit-down lunch. To make fried ham and eggs, you'll need thick sliced ham, eggs, butter, and bread, optional. Start by frying the ham slices in a hot skillet with a little butter until they are crispy and browned around the edges. In the same skillet, crack the eggs and cook them to your preferred doneness. Sunny side up is common, but over easy or scrambled works just as well. Serve the ham and eggs together on a plate, and if you like, toast a slice of bread to go with it. It's a no-fuss, satisfying meal that's perfect for any farm lunch. Chili and cornbread. Chili and cornbread is a quintessential farm lunch, offering warmth and satisfaction after a long morning of hard work. It's a dish that is both filling and affordable, made from ingredients that were easy to come by on the farm: beans, ground beef, tomatoes, and of course, cornmeal for the cornbread. Whether served at the kitchen table or packed in a lunch pail, this hearty duo was a comfort during colder months, providing the perfect balance of spice, savory goodness, and a touch of sweetness from the cornbread. Chili, with its rich, slow-simmered flavors, was a perfect way to use up leftover meats or beans, and it could be made in large batches, ensuring there was enough to feed a hungry family or crew. The beauty of chili was that it was endlessly customizable, seasoned with chili powder, cumin, and garlic, and sometimes spiced up with a little hot sauce or cayenne pepper. Beans, often pinto or kidney, added a satisfying heartiness to the dish, while tomatoes provided the base for the rich, savory broth. The result was a warming, flavorful meal that kept you going through the day. On the side, cornbread was the perfect companion to chili. Simple to make, it used just a handful of pantry staples: cornmeal, flour, eggs, and milk, and could be baked in a skillet or a pan. The cornbread added a slight sweetness to balance out the spiciness of the chili and was perfect for dipping into the stew-like goodness, soaking up all the flavorful juices. To make chili and cornbread, you'll need ground beef, beans, tomatoes, chili powder, garlic, onion, cornmeal, flour, butter, and milk. Begin by browning the ground beef and cooking the onions and garlic until fragrant. Add the tomatoes, beans, and seasonings, letting it simmer until the flavors meld together. For the cornbread, mix the cornmeal, flour, baking powder, milk, eggs, and butter, and bake until golden. Serve the chili hot with a generous slice of cornbread on the side, and enjoy a meal that's simple, hearty, and comforting, just like farm life itself. Shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie was the kind of meal that brought comfort and warmth to a chilly farm kitchen after a long day of labor. Hearty and filling, it made use of leftovers and simple ingredients that were easy to find on the farm, turning them into a satisfying dish that could feed a family without much fuss. The beauty of shepherd's pie was in its layers: a base of seasoned ground meat, often mixed with peas and carrots, topped with a creamy, buttery mashed potato crust. Once baked, it became a golden, bubbling pie that was both comforting and substantial. Farmers often had a surplus of root vegetables, like potatoes and carrots, as well as meat from their livestock. Shepherd's pie allowed them to stretch those ingredients into a meal that could last for several days. It was an economical way to turn leftovers into something new and exciting. The ground meat, usually lamb or beef, was browned and mixed with vegetables and gravy, creating a savory filling that was perfectly complemented by the rich mashed potatoes on top. This dish was also incredibly versatile, as farmers often used whatever vegetables they had on hand. Some might add onions, peas, or corn, depending on what was in season or what needed to be used up. The mashed potatoes, often made with fresh butter and milk, created a soft, fluffy topping that browned beautifully in the oven, adding a rich, comforting texture to the dish. To make shepherd's pie, you'll need ground meat, beef or lamb, potatoes, peas, carrots, onion, butter, milk, flour, beef broth, and seasonings. Start by boiling the potatoes until soft, then mash them with butter and milk. Brown the ground meat and cook the vegetables until tender, then make a gravy with flour and beef broth. Layer the meat and vegetable mixture in a baking dish, spread the mashed potatoes on top, and bake until golden brown. The result is a dish that's rich, hearty, and full of farm-fresh goodness, truly a meal made to sustain. Stuffed bell peppers. Stuffed Stuffed bell peppers were a farm favorite, turning simple ingredients into a hearty and colorful meal that could feed a crowd. These vibrant peppers, stuffed with a flavorful mixture of ground meat, rice, vegetables, and spices, were both filling and versatile. The beauty of this dish was that it could be easily customized based on what was available on the farm, making it the perfect way to use up extra vegetables or leftover meats from a previous meal. Whether served for lunch, dinner, or a special gathering, stuffed bell peppers always had a way of bringing people together around the table. Farmers often grew bell peppers in their gardens, and this dish allowed them to make the most of their harvest. The peppers were hollowed out and filled with a savory mixture of ground beef, rice, onions, and tomatoes. The result was a satisfying combination of textures, with the tender pepper providing a perfect vessel for the savory, seasoned filling inside. For many, stuffed bell peppers were a go-to meal because they could be made in large batches and kept for a few days, making them perfect for a busy farm family. The flavor combinations were endless. Sometimes farmers added cheese to the filling for extra richness, or sprinkled it on top for a cheesy crust. Herbs and spices, like garlic, cumin, and paprika, were used to add depth to the dish. The peppers themselves became soft and slightly caramelized as they baked in the oven, making each bite tender and full of flavor. To make stuffed bell peppers, you'll need bell peppers, ground beef or pork, rice, onion, garlic, tomatoes, cheese, optional, and seasonings. Start by cutting the tops off the peppers and removing the seeds. Cook the rice and ground meat, then mix them with chopped onions, garlic, tomatoes, and seasonings. Stuff the peppers with the mixture and place them in a baking dish. Bake until the peppers are tender, and if you're using cheese, sprinkle it on top for the last few minutes. The result is a meal that's not only delicious, but also a beautiful representation of farm-fresh ingredients at their best. Macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese is one of those timeless dishes that always seems to hit the spot, no matter the occasion. On the farm, it was a simple yet beloved lunch, providing comfort and warmth in every creamy, cheesy bite. Farmers often had a variety of dairy products on hand, from milk to butter to cheese, making macaroni and cheese an easy and affordable way to turn a few basic pantry ingredients into a satisfying meal. The pasta, perfectly coated in a velvety cheese sauce, was hearty enough to fuel a busy day of work while still being a crowd pleaser at the kitchen table. Macaroni and cheese was a dish that could be thrown together quickly, using whatever cheese was available. Cheddar, often the farmer's favorite, was most common. The simplicity of the dish was part of its charm. The creamy sauce made from butter, milk, and flour, combined with the sharpness of the cheese, created a rich base for the pasta. While some families kept it simple, others added a sprinkle of breadcrumbs on top, then baked it until golden and bubbly for that extra crunchy texture. It was a versatile dish, too. Some farmers added extras like peas, bacon, or leftover ham to make it even more filling. Others might serve it as a side to a heartier meal, or pack it for lunch in the fields. No matter how it was served, macaroni and cheese always felt like a little bit of home on the farm. To make macaroni and cheese, you'll need elbow macaroni, butter, flour, milk, cheddar cheese, and salt. Begin by cooking the pasta until it's al dente. While it's cooking, melt butter in a saucepan and whisk in the flour to make a roux. Slowly add the milk, stirring until the sauce thickens. Stir in the cheese until it's melted and smooth. Combine the sauce with the cooked pasta, then serve it as is, or pour it into a baking dish, top with breadcrumbs, and bake until golden. It's a meal that's simple, comforting, and perfect for any farmer's lunch. Pot roast and vegetables. Pot roast and vegetables were a farm favorite, perfect for those long days when a hearty meal was needed to fuel hours of hard work. This dish, slow cooked to perfection, was a true comfort food, filling the house with the savory aroma of beef, herbs, and roasted vegetables. It was a meal that farmers could prepare in the morning, let simmer throughout the day, and enjoy for lunch or dinner when they finally sat down to eat. The beauty of pot roast was that it could be made in large batches, providing multiple meals, and the leftovers could be used in a variety of ways. Farmers often raised their own cattle, which meant that pot roast was a delicious way to use a tougher cut of meat, like chuck roast, and turn it into something tender and flavorful. The meat was slow cooked in a pot with onions, carrots, potatoes, and herbs, allowing the flavors to meld together into a rich, savory stew. The slow cooking process made the beef incredibly tender, while the vegetables soaked up all the delicious juices from the meat and broth. What made pot roast and vegetables especially great for farmers was how easy it was to prepare and how well it could feed a crowd. This dish was often made on weekends or after a long week of work, bringing the family together for a satisfying meal. It was also incredibly versatile. Farmers could add other vegetables like parsnips or turnips, or season it with garlic, rosemary, or thyme for extra flavor. To make pot roast and vegetables, you'll need a chuck roast, potatoes, carrots, onions, beef broth, and seasonings like salt, pepper, and herbs. Begin by browning the roast in a heavy pot, then add the vegetables, beef broth, and seasonings. Cover and cook on low heat for several hours until the meat is tender and the vegetables are soft. Serve the pot roast with the cooked vegetables and a generous spoonful of the rich gravy. It's the kind of meal that's as nourishing as it is comforting, perfect for a hardworking farm family. Apple crisp. Apple crisp is the kind of farm dessert that brings both warmth and nostalgia, with its comforting blend of tender apples, sweet syrupy filling, and a crumbly, buttery topping. For farmers, it was a perfect way to make use of apples from the orchard, especially during the harvest season when the trees were heavy with fruit. Simple to prepare, apple crisp became a staple dessert in many farm kitchens, often served warm from the oven with a scoop of vanilla ice cream or a dollop of fresh cream. The beauty of apple crisp lay in its ability to transform a few humble ingredients into something extraordinary. Apples, which were often abundant on farms, were the star of the dish. They were sliced and tossed with sugar and spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, creating a fragrant, flavorful base. The topping, made from oats, flour, butter, and sugar, was crumbled over the apples and baked until golden brown. As it baked, the filling bubbled up around the topping, creating a comforting, gooey texture that was perfect for scooping onto a plate. Apple crisp was also wonderfully versatile. While the classic version featured apples, farmers often used other fruits from the farm, such as pears, peaches, or berries, depending on what was in season. Some might add a handful of nuts to the topping, giving it a little extra crunch, while others preferred to keep it simple, focusing on the sweetness of the apples and the richness of the buttery crust. To make apple crisp, you'll need apples, oats, flour, butter, sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Start by peeling and slicing the apples, then toss them with sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Place them in a baking dish and top with a mixture of oats, flour, butter, and sugar. Bake until the topping is golden brown and the apples are tender. Serve warm with ice cream or cream for an extra indulgence. This classic dessert is the perfect ending to a farm lunch, bringing together the best flavors of the season in one simple, satisfying dish. Beef stew. Beef stew was a farm favorite, hearty, warm, and incredibly filling, especially after a long day working in the fields. It was the kind of meal that could be prepared in advance and left to simmer, allowing the rich flavors to develop as it cooked. The beauty of beef stew was its simplicity. Made with a few humble ingredients like beef, potatoes, carrots, and onions, it could stretch into a meal for the entire family. It also had the added benefit of being a great way to use up tougher cuts of meat, turning them into something tender and delicious after hours of slow cooking. For farmers, beef stew was not only a practical meal, but also a comforting one. The slow, steady cooking process allowed the meat to become incredibly tender, and the vegetables absorbed the deep flavors of the broth. The addition of herbs and seasoning, like thyme, rosemary, or bay leaves, gave the stew an aromatic quality that made it irresistible. Whether eaten fresh or saved as leftovers for the next day's lunch, beef stew was a meal that only got better with time. The best part of beef stew was that it could be made in a single pot, making it easy to clean up after a busy day. Farmers often made a large pot of stew on the stove or in a Dutch oven over a fire, knowing that it would provide nourishment for days. It was perfect served with a slice of homemade bread or a piece of cornbread, allowing everyone to soak up the rich, savory broth. To make beef stew, you'll need beef stew meat, potatoes, carrots, onions, garlic, beef broth, and seasonings like salt, pepper, thyme, and bay leaves. Start by browning the beef in a pot, then add the vegetables and broth. Season with herbs, and let the stew simmer for a couple of hours until the meat is tender and the flavors meld together. Serve hot with bread on the side, and enjoy a dish that's both satisfying and soul-warming, perfect for any hardworking farm family. Ham and bean soup. Ham and bean soup is a comforting, classic farm dish, perfect for those chilly days when you need something hearty to fill you up after a long day of work. It's a meal that's both simple and rich in flavor, utilizing leftover ham and dried beans, two staples found on many farms. Farmers often kept a ham on hand, knowing that it could be used for a variety of meals, and bean soup was an excellent way to stretch a small amount of ham into a filling, nutritious meal. What made this soup so wonderful was that it was easy to make in large batches, could be enjoyed over several days, and was even better the next day when the flavors had time to meld. The beauty of ham and bean soup lies in its versatility. While the basic ingredients are simple, ham, dried beans, vegetables, and broth, it can be adjusted depending on what you have in the pantry or garden. Some farmers added carrots, onions, and celery for extra flavor, while others might toss in a few sprigs of thyme or a bay leaf for seasoning. The beans, which were often dried and stored in bulk, provided a hearty base that soaked up the rich flavors of the ham and broth, becoming tender and creamy as they cooked. One of the best parts of this soup is that it's a one-pot meal. It doesn't require a lot of attention as it simmers on the stove or in a slow cooker, allowing the beans to soften and absorb all the savory goodness from the ham. The smoky, salty flavor of the ham enhances the beans, creating a delicious and comforting bowl of soup. Whether served with a piece of crusty bread or cornbread, this soup was sure to satisfy even the hungriest of farm workers. To make ham and bean soup, you'll need dried beans, like navy or pinto, leftover ham or ham hocks, onions, carrots, celery, garlic, and broth, chicken or vegetable. Start by soaking the beans overnight, then drain and rinse them. In a large pot, sauté the onions, carrots, and celery until softened, then add the garlic and cook for another minute. Add the beans, ham, and broth, and bring to a boil. Lower the heat, cover, and let the soup simmer for a couple of hours until the beans are tender. Season with salt and pepper to taste, and serve hot with bread on the side. This soup is rich, hearty, and perfect for any hardworking farm family. Corn fritters. Corn fritters are a beloved farm dish, perfect for making the most of summer's bountiful corn harvest. Crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, these golden fritters were a favorite for farmers looking for a quick, satisfying lunch or snack. Made from simple ingredients, corn, flour, eggs, and a little bit of sugar, they were easy to whip up and could be served on their own or alongside a variety of other meals. Whether enjoyed fresh from the skillet or packed for a midday break in the fields, corn fritters brought a sense of comfort and satisfaction to any farm kitchen. Corn was a crop that thrived on the farm, and when it was in season, farmers often had an abundance of fresh corn to work with. While corn on the cob was a staple side dish, corn fritters provided a different way to enjoy the crop. These fritters could be made with fresh corn kernels cut off the cob, or even with canned or frozen corn when fresh wasn't available. The batter itself was simple: flour, eggs, sugar, and a touch of milk, resulting in a slightly sweet and savory flavor that perfectly complemented the natural sweetness of the corn. What made corn fritters so great was their versatility. They could be served as a snack, a side dish, or even as the main event for lunch. Sometimes, farmers would top them with a dollop of sour cream, or drizzle them with syrup for a sweet treat. They were a great way to use up leftover corn, and they could be made in large batches to feed a hungry family or crew. Plus, they were easy to eat on the go, making them perfect for a quick break during a long day of work in the fields. To make corn fritters, you'll need fresh or frozen corn, flour, eggs, sugar, baking powder, salt, and milk. Start by mixing the dry ingredients in one bowl: flour, sugar, baking powder, and salt. In another bowl, whisk the eggs and milk together, then add the corn. Gradually combine the wet and dry ingredients, stirring until you have a thick batter. Heat a little oil or butter in a skillet over medium heat and drop spoonfuls of the batter into the pan. Fry until golden brown on both sides, then drain on paper towels. Serve hot with a bit of butter or syrup and enjoy this crispy, satisfying treat that makes the most of fresh farm ingredients. Sausage and gravy biscuits. Sausage and gravy biscuits were a classic farm lunch, providing the perfect combination of rich, savory flavors and hearty satisfaction. This dish, beloved by generations of farmers, was a simple yet indulgent meal that could easily fuel a long afternoon of work. The golden, flaky biscuits, topped with a creamy, spiced sausage gravy, were comforting, filling, and made from pantry staples that were always close at hand. Whether eaten at the kitchen table or packed for a quick meal in the field, sausage and gravy biscuits never failed to deliver. For farmers, breakfast often doubled as lunch when there wasn't time for a sit-down meal later in the day, and sausage and gravy biscuits fit the bill perfectly. The sausage, often sourced from pigs raised right on the farm, was fried until crispy and crumbled into a rich, savory gravy made with milk, butter, and a touch of flour to thicken it. The result was a creamy, peppered sauce that clung to the soft, warm biscuits. Each bite was a perfect balance of crispy sausage and smooth gravy, all wrapped up in a buttery, flaky biscuit. This dish was incredibly versatile and could be adjusted to taste. Some families preferred a milder gravy, while others added a bit of heat with cayenne or hot sauce. The biscuits themselves could be made from scratch or with a quick biscuit mix, making it a dish that could be prepared with whatever ingredients were on hand. It was also a great way to use up leftover sausage or make a filling meal from a small amount of meat. To make sausage and gravy biscuits, you'll need sausage, flour, milk, butter, salt, pepper, and biscuits, store-bought or homemade. Start by frying the sausage in a skillet until browned and crumbled. Remove some of the grease, then add flour to create a roux. Slowly stir in the milk and cook until thickened. Season with salt and pepper, then serve the gravy over warm biscuits. This dish is the perfect combination of flavors and textures, offering a hearty, comforting meal that captures the essence of farm life. Chicken and rice casserole. Chicken and rice casserole is the ultimate farm meal, hearty, comforting, and incredibly easy to make. This dish was perfect for farmers who needed a filling, nourishing lunch that could be prepped in advance and left to bake while they went about their work. Made with just a few simple ingredients, chicken, rice, cream of mushroom soup, and a few spices, it's a meal that could be stretched to feed a crowd and provide leftovers for days. What makes chicken and rice casserole so beloved is the way the flavors meld together, with the rice absorbing the savory chicken broth and the creamy sauce creating a rich, satisfying dish. Farmers often use chicken from their own flocks, making it a readily available protein. Whether leftover roast chicken or freshly cooked, the meat was shredded and mixed with rice, vegetables, and a creamy sauce, all baked together in a single dish. The beauty of chicken and rice casserole lies in its versatility. Depending on what was available in the pantry, farmers might add peas, carrots, or onions, or sprinkle some cheese on top for an extra creamy finish. It was a meal that could be customized to fit the season or what ingredients were on hand. Another advantage of chicken and rice casserole was that it could be made in large batches, which was perfect for farm families. It could easily feed a hungry crew, and any leftovers could be enjoyed the next day. The casserole also kept well, making it a great option for preparing ahead of time and having a warm meal ready to go after a long day. To make chicken and rice casserole, you'll need chicken, cooked or uncooked, rice, cream of mushroom soup, chicken broth, butter, and any additional vegetables or seasonings you prefer. Start by cooking the rice and chicken, then mix them together with the soup, broth, and vegetables. Pour everything into a baking dish, top with a bit of butter or cheese, and bake until golden and bubbly. This easy, comforting casserole is the perfect lunch or dinner for any hardworking farm family. Potato soup. Potato soup is the kind of dish that wraps you in warmth and comfort, especially after a long day on the farm. It's the perfect meal for those chilly mornings or evenings when a hearty, filling bowl of soup is just what's needed to recharge. Made with simple ingredients, potatoes, onions, butter, and milk, this soup is both affordable and satisfying, ideal for a busy farm family. Over the years, potato soup has become a staple in farm kitchens thanks to its ability to feed a large crowd without a lot of expense or effort. Farmers often had an abundance of potatoes, which could be stored through the colder months. This versatility made them a staple on the farm, used in everything from mashed potatoes to potato salads to, of course, soup. The beauty of potato soup lies in its simplicity. The potatoes, once boiled, become soft and creamy, and when combined with a rich, savory broth, they create a base that is both hearty and comforting. Add a bit of butter, milk, and seasonings like salt, pepper, and thyme, and you've got a dish that warms you up from the inside out. While potato soup is delicious on its own, it's also incredibly easy to customize. Some farmers added bacon for a bit of smoky flavor, while others stirred in cheese or sour cream to make the soup even richer. Carrots, celery, or onions could be thrown in for extra flavor, and if you had fresh herbs from the garden, they were the perfect finishing touch. It's the kind of dish that can adapt to whatever is available, and no matter how you make it, it's always comforting. To make potato soup, you'll need potatoes, butter, onions, garlic, chicken broth or water, milk, salt, pepper, and any optional add-ins like cheese, bacon, or herbs. Start by peeling and chopping the potatoes, then cook them in a large pot with diced onions and garlic and butter until softened. Add the broth or water and bring to a simmer. Once the potatoes are tender, mash them slightly for a creamy texture, then stir in milk and seasonings. If you're adding bacon, cheese, or other extras, now's the time. Let it simmer until everything is well combined and heated through. Serve hot with a slice of bread or cornbread on the side. This simple, delicious potato soup will remind you of the warmth and comfort that a good farm meal provides. Perfect for any hungry soul. Chicken and dumplings. Chicken and dumplings is the epitome of comfort food on the farm. It's the kind of meal that fills the kitchen with the smell of rich, simmering broth and fresh, pillowy dumplings. Farmers often made this dish on chilly days when there was a bit more time to prepare a filling lunch, and it was a perfect way to use up leftover chicken from a previous meal. The beauty of chicken and dumplings lies in its simplicity, just a few basic ingredients, like chicken, flour, and broth, coming together to create something truly satisfying. Farm families would typically use a whole chicken for this dish, boiling it in water or broth to create a flavorful stock. Once the chicken was cooked and shredded, it was added back to the broth, along with vegetables like carrots, celery, and onions. The stock simmered away, becoming a rich, savory base for the dumplings. The dumplings themselves were made from a simple dough, flour, baking powder, salt, butter, and milk, and dropped right into the simmering pot. As they cooked, they puffed up into soft, fluffy pillows that soaked up all the delicious flavors of the broth, adding a comforting texture to the dish. What makes chicken and dumplings such a favorite on the farm is how adaptable it is. You can use any vegetables you have on hand, and the dumplings can be as thick or as light as you like. Some farmers prefer a heartier, more dense dumpling, while others make them light and fluffy to melt in your mouth. Either way, the combination of tender chicken, vegetables, and fluffy dumplings creates a meal that's both satisfying and nourishing. To make chicken and dumplings, you'll need chicken, broth or water, carrots, celery, onions, flour, baking powder, milk, butter, and seasonings. Start by boiling the chicken in water or broth with onions, carrots, and celery until the chicken is cooked through and the broth is flavorful. Remove the chicken, shred it, and return it to the pot. In a separate bowl, mix the flour, baking powder, butter, and milk to form the dumpling dough. Drop spoonfuls of the dough into the simmering broth, cover, and cook for about 10 to 15 minutes, or until the dumplings are cooked through. Serve hot with a sprinkle of fresh herbs or pepper on top, and enjoy a hearty, comforting dish that captures the spirit of farm cooking at its best. Biscuits and sausage gravy. Biscuits and sausage gravy is the quintessential farm breakfast that doubled as a hearty lunch for many hardworking families. This dish, simple yet indulgent, is rich in both flavor and history. It's the kind of meal that fills the kitchen with warmth and invites everyone to the table with its savory aroma. Farmers would often prepare this comforting meal to kickstart a long day in the fields or to replenish their energy after morning chores. It's a meal that's satisfying enough to keep you going through the toughest of days, with its flaky biscuits topped with creamy, peppered sausage gravy. The beauty of biscuits and sausage gravy lies in its simplicity and its ability to stretch a small amount of meat into a filling meal. The gravy itself is made from ground sausage, flour, milk, and plenty of black pepper. The sausage is browned in a skillet, breaking it up into crumbles. Then flour is added to thicken the gravy. Milk is poured in, creating a creamy base that's perfectly seasoned with salt and pepper. The result is a velvety, flavorful gravy that's the perfect topping for soft, buttery biscuits. Farmers often made the biscuits from scratch using just flour, butter, and milk. Those store-bought biscuits were also a quick solution on busy mornings. The biscuits, baked until golden brown, provide the perfect texture contrast to the creamy gravy, light, airy, and slightly crispy around the edges. Whether served for breakfast or lunch, the combination of tender biscuits and rich sausage gravy is a meal that's both comforting and filling. Biscuits and sausage gravy could be customized depending on what was available in the pantry. Some families added a bit of sage to the sausage for extra flavor, while others might throw in a pinch of red pepper flakes to add a little heat. The dish could also be served alongside eggs, bacon, or potatoes to make it even more substantial. To make biscuits and sausage gravy, you'll need sausage, flour, milk, black pepper, butter, and either homemade or store-bought biscuits. Start by browning the sausage in a skillet, then stir in flour to create a roux. Gradually add milk while stirring constantly to form a creamy gravy. Season with salt and pepper. Serve the gravy over warm biscuits and enjoy a meal that's not just filling, but a true taste of farm comfort. As we wrap up this journey through 30 forgotten farm lunches, it's clear that these meals were more than just sustenance. They were a reflection of a simpler time, when resourcefulness and creativity in the kitchen helped nourish hardworking families day after day. These dishes, born from necessity and shaped by tradition, tell the story of farmers who made the most of what they had, transforming basic ingredients into meals that were both hearty and satisfying. Whether it was the humble fried bologna sandwich, the comforting bowl of chicken and dumplings, or the rich, velvety sausage gravy smothered over biscuits, each meal was crafted with care, love, and a deep connection to the land. They remind us that food isn't just about filling our stomachs. It's about community, warmth, and creating memories around the table. As you explore these recipes, consider bringing a little bit of farm history into your own kitchen. These meals have stood the test of time for a reason. They're delicious, practical, and above all, comforting. So, the next time you're hungry for something simple yet full of heart, you know where to turn. Happy cooking, and may these forgotten farm lunches bring a little nostalgia and warmth into your home.